My name is Janet Dillard, 32 years old. The text arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, just as I was wrapping up a video call with investors in Tokyo. 23 people on the screen discussing a 400 million acquisition, and then my phone buzzed. We're having Thanksgiving at Rosewood Bistro tomorrow at 7:00 p.m. Family only. Enjoy your TV dinner, Dad. I stared at those words for a full 5 seconds before the sound in my headphones came rushing back. The investors still talking about market projections, revenue forecasts, the sterile rhythm of business continuing as if nothing had happened. But everything inside me had gone still. Rosewood Bistro, our family's sacred place where Dad had toasted his retirement, where Emma announced her engagement, where we'd celebrated every birthday that mattered. The place where laughter once meant belonging. I muted my mic, forcing my voice steady as I typed back, "Have fun." Then unmuted and spoke about regulatory compliance as though my heart wasn't splintering. My assistant Jessica caught my reflection in the glass wall of the conference room, my lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. When the call ended, I sat alone in my office on the 38th floor of Willis Tower, Chicago, gleaming below me in the cold afternoon light. 32 CEO of Dillard Hospitality Group, owner of 47 restaurants in 6 states. And yet my own family had just uninvited me from Thanksgiving dinner. The irony tasted like metal. I exhaled slowly, pulled out my phone, and scrolled through our family group chat, the months of small cuts that had led to this. August. I missed my nephew Tyler's birthday because I was in Seattle finalizing a deal. Emma sent a text about priorities and family commitment. September. I left my cousin's wedding early for a conference call. Dad cornered me in the parking lot saying, "When are you going to stop playing businesswoman and start living like a normal person?" October. Marcus confessed during dinner that he was behind on his mortgage. I'd offered to help him review his budget. He exploded, shouting across the table, "We don't need advice, Janet. We need help, real help." That was the night Dad said the words that stuck. "I don't know what happened to you, Janet. You used to care about family." And I'd replied, "I still do." "No, you care about money. There's a difference." I hadn't realized until now how those sentences had planted a seed that had been quietly growing into something sharp. Jessica knocked softly. "You okay, Miss Dillard?" Her voice sounded careful, as if she'd entered a room full of broken glass. I forced a smile. "Fine, just thinking." But I wasn't fine. I was calculating. "Jessica," I said suddenly, "I need everything you can get on Rosewood Bistro Financial's ownership debts, all of it." She blinked. "Is this for a potential acquisition?" "Something like that." Her brows furrowed. "You want it fast?" "As fast as possible." When she left, I leaned back, watching the afternoon fade into amber reflections on the windows. My pulse thudded in my throat, equal parts pain and adrenaline. They thought they could cut me out of the table. They forgot who built the table in the first place. By 4 o'clock, Jessica returned, holding a thick folder. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "The restaurant's owner, David Chin, he's been trying to sell for 6 months. Wants to retire to Florida, asking $2.3 million. I flipped through the pages, clean balance sheet. Strong location. No outstanding loans. Any serious buyers? 2 fell through. Perfect. Jessica hesitated. "Miss Dillard, may I ask what you're planning to do?" I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that could either melt or burn. "Remind my family what happens when they underestimate me." She tilted her head. "So you're buying Rosewood Bistro?" I looked down at the familiar name printed across the top of the report, memories blurring into ink. "Not just buying it," I said. "I'm reclaiming it." The skyline beyond my window flared gold as the sun sank over the city, 1,000 little fires glittering across the glass towers. Somewhere in that light, I could almost hear Dad's voice again, accusing, disappointed. "Well, Dad, let's see how disappointed you are when I own the table you're eating at." I reached for my phone, already dialing Jessica back. "Tell David Chin I'm interested," I said. "Full asking price. I want the papers ready tonight." She froze. "Tonight, that's non-negotiable." There was a pause. "Okay, but can I ask one last thing?" "Go ahead." She studied me for a long second, worry written all over her face. "Is this about business or about them?" My eyes shifted to the family photo on my desk, the 4 of us smiling at Rosewood Bistro 3 Thanksgivings ago. "It's about closure," I lied. But even I could taste the bitterness in the word. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one. The reflection of my face stared back at me from the glass. Sharp and composed, a stranger I'd built from ambition and armor. Family only, the message had said. Fine, I'd give them exactly that. A family dinner they'd never forget. Jessica worked faster than I'd ever seen her. Within an hour, she'd arranged a call with David Chin, owner of Rosewood Bistro. At 5:30 p.m., his voice came through the speakerphone, low, calm, seasoned by decades in the restaurant world. "Miss Dillard, Jessica tells me you're interested in Rosewood Bistro." "I am," I replied. "I'm prepared to offer your full asking price, $2.3 million in cash, with closing tomorrow morning." A pause, then a soft chuckle. "Tomorrow, that's Thanksgiving." "I'm aware," I said evenly. "I'll pay $200,000 above asking for an expedited timeline." Another silence, then his quiet curiosity. "May I ask why the rush?" I looked out over the Chicago skyline, the glass towers fading into dusk. "Let's just say I have a personal interest in owning that restaurant by tomorrow evening." He didn't press further, but I could sense he knew men like Chin understood the things money couldn't say out loud. "You remind me of myself 30 years ago," he said. "Ambitious, determined, maybe a little angry." His words landed harder than I expected. "Is that a problem?" "Not for me. But revenge is a poor dessert, Miss Dillard. It never fills you up." For a second, I almost laughed. "I'm not hungry, Mr. Chin, just ready to close." By 8:00 p.m., I was in my lawyer's office with Chin and his attorney. The conference table gleamed under fluorescent lights, the smell of old coffee, the whisper of paper, the weight of decisions that couldn't be undone. As we reviewed the contracts, Chin's eyes studied me with gentle curiosity. "Why Rosewood Bistro?" he asked finally. "You could buy any restaurant in Chicago." "It's the right fit for my company," I said. He smiled, not convinced. "And for your heart?" I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at the restaurant's deed lying between us, his name written in elegant cursive, about to be replaced by mine. The ink felt heavier than it should. When the papers were signed at 9:23 p.m., he shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Miss Dillard. I hope the place serves you well." "Thank you," I said softly. "I think it already has." He tilted his head. "You sound like someone who's lost something here." "I did," I replied, "but tonight I found a way to get it back." He gave a knowing nod. "Then take care of it better than I did." By 6:00 a.m., Thanksgiving morning, I arrived at Rosewood Bistro. The air outside was brittle with frost. My breath turned white as I unlocked the door for the first time. Inside, it smelled of thyme and wood polish. The dining room glowed faintly from the dawn light, filtering through frosted windows. Every table perfectly aligned, every wine glass gleaming like a secret waiting to be told. I traced a hand along the polished mahogany bar where my father once stood laughing after his retirement toast. The echo of that moment still lived in the walls. Chef Antoine Dubose, a tall man with kind eyes and a streak of silver in his beard, emerged from the kitchen. "Miss Dillard, I wasn't expecting anyone here this early." "There's been a change in ownership," I said. "As of last night, I own Rosewood Bistro." He blinked, stunned. "You bought it yesterday?" "Yes." His eyebrows lifted, equal parts awe and confusion. "May I ask why?" "Because sometimes," I said, "you have to remind people where they came from." He nodded slowly, perhaps sensing the storm beneath my calm tone. "What would you like us to prepare for tonight?" I turned toward the private dining room. "Set up table 12. I want it ready for 8 people. 8. Yes, but only 7 chairs. Antoine hesitated. 7 chairs. Exactly. He didn't ask again. He'd been in kitchens long enough to know when not to pry. Later that morning, as the kitchen buzzed with Thanksgiving preparations, I stood in front of the carved inscription above the doorway, a phrase I'd never noticed before, now catching the light in perfect irony. "Family is served here." The words twisted inside me like a knife. Jessica arrived carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said carefully. "Happy Thanksgiving," I replied, though it didn't sound like one. She glanced around the restaurant, amazed. "I still can't believe you own this place now. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I mean, your family's going to—" "See me," I interrupted. "That's all I want." Jessica sighed, lowering her voice. "You know, not everything broken has to be fixed with a business deal." I smiled without humor. "No. But sometimes business is the only language people understand." She studied me, then whispered, "You're really going to host them here?" "Yes, tonight at 7. Jessica shook her head. "You're something else, Janet." "I know." I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching the condensation on the glass door blur the restaurant's name. But so are they. By noon, I'd hired a sign company to install a new placard in the front window. Under new management, Dillard Hospitality Group. It gleamed in silver script against the glass, catching the winter sunlight. When the workers left, I stood alone in the empty dining room. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, the smell of roasting herbs seeping from the kitchen. I ran a hand along table 12, smooth, elegant, ready. 1 seat short. 8 meant inclusion. 7 meant the truth. For a long moment, I pictured their faces when they walked in confusion, disbelief, maybe even fear. Then I whispered half to myself, half to the ghost of who I used to be. Let's eat. Thanksgiving afternoon arrived cold and quiet, the kind of silence that feels like the city is holding its breath. Inside, Rosewood Bistro warmth pulsed from the kitchen, the rhythmic clang of pots, the hiss of caramelized butter, and the faint hum of jazz that Chef Antoine always played when he cooked. I moved through the restaurant, slowly memorizing every detail. The faint scratches on the old oak floor, the candle holders that had seen decades of laughter, the framed photographs of former owners smiling with celebrities and politicians. I paused at one black and white photo near the entrance, a young David Chin standing proudly beside the same bar I now owned. It struck me that every person who'd ever run this place probably thought they were building something permanent. But permanence was an illusion, family legacy, belonging all of it could be rewritten with a single decision. Antoine approached from behind, wiping his hands on a towel. The staff's all here, Miss Dillard. They're a bit surprised you wanted to work on Thanksgiving. I don't ask anyone to do what I wouldn't do myself. He nodded respectfully. What kind of evening are we expecting? Private event. 1 table, 7 guests. Antoine frowned slightly. Table 12. Yes, set for 8 people, but only 7 chairs. He hesitated. 7 chairs. I met his gaze. Exactly 7. Leave 1 space open as if someone was supposed to be there but didn't show. He didn't ask for details. He simply nodded and walked away, the chef's intuition whispering that this night wasn't about food. It was about something heavier, more dangerous. As the staff prepared, I stepped into the private dining room. The long table gleamed under a chandelier, every glass polished to perfection. I adjusted 1 napkin slightly crooked and smiled. Perfection mattered tonight. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Everything ready. You sure about this? I typed back, more sure than I've ever been. But as I set the phone down, my hand lingered. For the first time since last night, a flicker of doubt pierced the armor. What was I really doing, proving a point, or trying to be seen by the people who'd stopped looking? I brushed the thought away and turned toward the mirror on the far wall. My reflection stared back, sleek black dress hair, pinned high, eyes sharp but tired. I didn't look like a daughter tonight. I looked like a weapon. By 3:00 p.m., the new sign was finished and mounted outside. Under new management, Dillard Hospitality Group. The silver letters shimmered against the glass like a challenge. Antoine walked over, glancing at the sign. That'll get people talking. That's the point, I said. He hesitated, then added quietly, Miss Dillard, if I may. Family feuds don't end well when mixed with dinner service. I turned toward him. This isn't a feud, chef. It's a reminder. He studied me, then gave a soft, resigned nod. Understood. Then we'll make it the finest reminder Chicago's ever seen. By 5:00 p.m., the kitchen was alive. Roasted garlic perfumed the air. Violins from an old playlist drifted through the speakers, and staff whispered curious guesses about the mysterious private party. I walked through them calmly, inspecting each plate, each garnish, each centerpiece. One of the younger servers, a girl barely 20, whispered to another, Why only 7 chairs, if it's for 8? The other shrugged. Maybe someone died. I caught that, but didn't respond. Maybe someone had the version of me who once begged to be loved by them. At 6:00 p.m., I stood alone in the lobby, the restaurant now empty of other guests. Every light was dimmed, just enough to create a soft golden glow. My heels clicked quietly on the floor as I moved to the front window. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the streets in silver. For a moment, I almost called it off. Almost. Then headlights cut through the snowfall, a black SUV pulling up to the curb. My pulse quickened. Showtime, I whispered. Inside the kitchen, Antoine peeked out toward the front, catching sight of me standing perfectly still in the lobby, my posture rigid as marble. He turned to his sous chef. Ever seen someone preparing for war in a dress? The sous chef smirked. No, chef. You're seeing it now. The clock struck 7:00 p.m. sharp. The door opened. Laughter spilled in before they did. My father in his tailored gray suit, Mom with her pearl necklace glinting under the light, Emma in burgundy silk, Marcus and his wife Sarah, ushering their kids in with smiles so bright they could blind. They looked happy, whole, as if my absence had made their lives lighter. The sight hit harder than I'd expected. Dad approached the hostess stand, glancing at the empty lobby. Strange, no hostess tonight. He turned and froze when he saw me. For a moment, no one spoke. The air shifted dense with confusion. Janet, Dad said, Voice caught somewhere between disbelief and irritation. What are you doing here? Working, I said smoothly. Welcome to Rosewood Bistro. How can I help you this evening? Emma stepped forward, brow furrowed. Working. You can't just we told you this dinner was family only. I know, I said, smiling faintly. That's why I'm not joining you as a guest. Marcus frowned. Then why are you here? I stepped aside, gesturing toward the window. Because I'm the owner. The room went utterly still. Even the clinking of plates from the kitchen stopped. Their eyes widened in slow, dawning disbelief. You, what Dad asked, his voice almost breaking. I bought Rosewood Bistro yesterday, I said quietly. Closed this morning. $2.5 million. Cash. Mom's hand flew to her chest. You're joking! No, I said. You can ask Mr. Chin. He's somewhere in Florida right now, celebrating his early retirement. Marcus blinked, incredulous. You bought the restaurant just to host my own family dinner. Their confusion curdled into unease. We already have a reservation, Sarah murmured. I know, I said. Table 12, party of 7. Right this way. I turned, leading them through the glowing dining room toward the private suite at the back. My heels clicked against the floor, steady as a metronome. Behind me, no one spoke. When we reached the doorway, Emma stopped short. Wait, where's the 8th chair? I looked back at her. My smile didn't reach my eyes. There isn't one, I said. Family only, remember. The silence that followed my words was so thick it could have been carved with a knife. Only the faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the air as my family stood frozen at the entrance of the private dining room. Dad's jaw tightened. Janet, what kind of stunt is this? No stunt, I said calmly. You sent me a message saying I wasn't family anymore. I just decided to respect it. Mom's voice trembled. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm entirely serious. Emma's lips curled. You bought an entire restaurant, what, to make a point? I walked to the center of the room, fingertips grazing the polished edge of table 12. No, I said softly. To remind you who you're underestimating. Marcus laughed, once dry and humorless. You've really lost it. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just learned to stop waiting for permission to belong. For a long moment, no one moved. The candles flickered between us, little tongues of fire dancing in the tension. Then I gestured toward the chairs. You should sit. Dinner's about to be served. Dad hesitated, but finally took a seat at the head of the table, the same seat he'd occupied every Thanksgiving before. The others followed slowly, uncertainly. I stayed standing. Chef Antoine appeared in the doorway, expression neutral, carrying the first course. Butternut squash soup with truffle oil, he announced, setting each bowl carefully before them. Thank you, Antoine, I said. Please tell the kitchen to continue as planned. He nodded and disappeared, the doors swinging closed behind him. The silence at the table was suffocating. Marcus stirred his soup, but didn't eat. Emma's eyes darted around the room, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, Dad broke it. Janet, why are you doing this? I leaned against the wall, arms folded. Because for months you've treated me like a stranger who wandered too far from home. I thought you should see what that stranger can do. Mom's voice was soft. We never said you were a stranger. No, I said. You just uninvited me to dinner. Same thing, just more polite. Marcus slammed his spoon down. You make everything about you, always have. We can't even have a meal without it turning into your grand performance. I raised an eyebrow. A meal you deliberately excluded me from. That's because you're impossible, he snapped. You act superior, like you're better than the rest of us. I took a slow step forward. I never said I was better. I just refused to shrink so you could feel bigger. He looked away, his face flushing. Emma sighed. You could have just talked to us, Janet. You didn't have to buy the entire restaurant. Talking hasn't worked, I said quietly. You stopped listening the moment I became successful. Dad rubbed his temples. You're twisting everything. We're proud of you, but you changed. I laughed, sharp, bitter. I changed because I had to. You call it ambition like it's a disease. You think success erased who I am, but it didn't. It just exposed what you wanted me to be smaller. For a moment, the only sound was the faint clinking of silverware. Mom reached for her napkin, dabbing at the corner of her eye. We didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. We just felt left behind. Her honesty caught me off guard. I wanted to say something kind, but the wound was too raw. Then you should have told me that, I said softly, instead of locking me out. Chef Antoine reappeared. With the second course, roasted duck with orange glaze, he placed the plates down, one by one, glancing at me for permission to continue. I gave him a small nod. The rich scent filled the room, but no one lifted a fork. Dad stared at his plate for a long time before saying quietly, When did you start believing we didn't love you? I swallowed. When love started coming with conditions. He looked up confused. Conditions. When I could only belong if I played the part of the good daughter, the one who never said no, who never outgrew your approval. Emma sighed, her voice breaking. We were just trying to keep the family close. By pushing me out, she looked down, tears forming. You were never around, Janet. You chose your company over us again and again. I felt the sting of truth in her words. It hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I steadied my tone. I was trying to build something lasting, Emma. Something I thought we could all be proud of. Marcus muttered. You could have just helped us when we needed it, instead of preaching about budgets. And you could have listened when I tried, I said sharply. You wanted money, not help. And when I didn't hand you a check, you turned it into a moral failure on my part. The air thickened. Finally, Dad sighed heavily. Maybe we've all said things we shouldn't have. Maybe I said meeting his gaze. But words cut deep. And yours, they left scars. He winced. You think I don't regret that? Do you? He opened his mouth but said nothing. For a long, brittle moment, no one spoke. Then the lights flickered, slightly candles trembling. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pan clattered, a small reminder that life went on outside this room. I drew in a breath, stepping closer to the table. Let's make something clear, I said quietly. I didn't bring you here to gloat. I brought you here to see me the woman you stopped seeing. Emma's tear slipped down her cheek. We see you, Janet. I shook my head. No. You see what makes you uncomfortable, the version of me that outgrew your expectations. But you don't see me, Marcus muttered under his breath. Maybe we never will. I smiled faintly. Then this will be your last Thanksgiving at Rosewood Bistro. Mom gasped softly. Yes, I said. After tonight, this table and this restaurant will no longer be open for you. They stared at me in disbelief as I turned away, walking toward the frosted glass doors that looked out into the main dining area where strangers laughed over their meals. Their laughter drifted faintly into the private room, echoing against the quiet tension of our silence. Funny, I murmured. I bought this place to prove I didn't need family. But somehow, that's all I can think about tonight. I turned back to them, my eyes glinting under the chandelier. Enjoy your dinner. You've earned it. And then I left them sitting there, 7 plates of untouched duck cooling in front of them. 7 faces trying to figure out whether I was the villain or the mirror. The clinking of silverware had stopped completely. The only sound left was the faint hiss of candles burning down between the untouched plates. From the hallway outside the private dining room, I could hear muffled voices, my family trying to decide whether to stay or leave. I waited a moment, then returned quietly. No one's eating, I asked. Dad looked up, eyes heavy. Would you in our place? I tilted my head. You mean in the place I wasn't allowed to have? Marcus scoffed. You've made your point, Janet. Congratulations. You're rich, powerful, and miserable. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. If you think this is about money, you still don't know me at all. Mom's voice was small. Then what is it about? I walked around the table, slowly stopping behind each of them as I spoke. It's about being told I'm too busy, too distant, too different. About hearing my own family say I've changed, as if that's something to be ashamed of. I stopped behind Marcus. When you asked for help, I didn't say no. I said I'd help you fix the problem. But that wasn't enough, was it? You didn't want a solution. You wanted a savior. He turned, his jaw tightening. You think everything's a lesson, Janet. Some of us just needed a hand. And some of us needed to learn how to stand, I shot back. Emma pushed her plate aside. You talk like we're failures. No, I said softly. I talk like someone who had to succeed alone. For a long beat, the words hung between us like fog. Dad sighed, rubbing his temple. We didn't mean to make you feel unwanted. But you did. He looked at me weary and regretful. You were always so driven. We thought you didn't need us. That almost broke me. I always needed you, I said, voice trembling now. Just not in the way you thought. I didn't need your money or your approval. I needed your pride. I needed someone to say, we see you, Janet. We're proud of you. Mom's eyes welled up. Oh, honey. But I shook my head. Save it. You only see me when I'm in front of you. When I'm gone, I'm a story you tell each other, the successful one who forgot her roots. Chef Antoine reappeared, breaking the moment. He carried the main course, herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables, and paused when he saw the tension. Shall I come back later? I smiled faintly. No, let them eat. Even family drama deserves good food. He served the plates in silence, then turned to me. For you, Miss Dillard. I gestured toward the empty spot at the table, the missing chair. No chef. My seat's already taken. He hesitated, eyes flicking from the empty space to my face. Understood. He bowed slightly and left. The scent of rosemary filled the room. None of them picked up their forks. Dad finally spoke, his voice low. Janet, what do you want from us? I want you to stop pretending you were victims of my ambition, I said. I worked for everything I have, every deal, every restaurant, every sleepless night. You think success made me selfish? Maybe. But what made me strong was the silence you left me in. Marcus muttered, "You make it sound like we abandoned you." I met his eyes. "Didn't you?" He looked down. I took a breath, letting the anger soften just slightly. "Do you know where I learned to fight in kitchens like this one? I started washing dishes when I was 17. I was the only girl on the night shift. Every day I came home smelling like grease and sweat, but I kept showing up. I saved every dollar to buy a food truck, then a cafe, then another. I built my company from the ground up while you all said I worked too much." Emma whispered, "We just missed you." "I missed you too," I said, voice breaking for the first time. "But you didn't wait for me. You replaced me." Mom reached across the table, tears glistening. "We never replaced you. We just didn't know how to reach you anymore." That stopped me. For a second, I didn't know how to breathe. The anger, the pride, the hurt, they all tangled together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Dad's voice softened. "Janet, we said things we shouldn't have. You did too. Maybe tonight isn't about proving anything. Maybe it's about starting over." His tone, gentle, almost pleading, made something in me shift. For the first time that night, I saw him not as the man who excluded me, but as the man who once worked 2 jobs so I could go to college. But the memory of that Tex family only still burned too deeply to forgive just yet. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but starting over requires honesty, and we haven't had that for a long time." I walked to the window overlooking the main dining room. Out there, other families were laughing, clinking glasses, celebrating love and togetherness, everything we'd lost. "Look at them," I said softly. "They're eating the same food we are. But they have something we don't grace." Behind me, Emma whispered, "We can get that back." "Maybe," I said again, my voice trembling. "But I'm not sure you even want to." The candle nearest me flickered and went out, leaving a wisp of smoke curling upward. "Finish your dinner," I said. "Then go home. Think about whether this is the family you want to be." I turned toward the door, pausing only once to look back at them. "I'm not the little girl you used to scold for dreaming too big. I'm the woman who made those dreams real, and tonight I needed you to see that." Then I left them sitting in that golden room full of untouched lamb, half-burned candles, and words that would echo long after I was gone. I stood in the hallway outside the private dining room, the door closed behind me, the muffled silence pressing against my back. My heels clicked softly as I walked toward the front of the restaurant. Every sound, the simmer of sauce in the kitchen, the faint murmur of diners beyond the wall, felt too normal for what was happening inside that room. I stopped near the window where the new sign gleamed faintly in the reflection of the city lights under new management, Dillard Hospitality Group. The words looked powerful, final. But inside I didn't feel powerful. I felt, empty. Jessica called. "Janet, you all right? You haven't texted me since this morning." "I'm fine," I said automatically, watching the reflection of my family through the glass. Dad had set his fork down. Emma was crying quietly. Marcus was talking with his hands angry but shaken. Jessica hesitated on the line. "Fine doesn't sound like you." I exhaled slowly. I thought this would feel like victory, but all I see are people I used to know sitting around a table I built out of spite. "You did what you had to do," Jessica said. "Did I?" I whispered. "Or did I just become exactly what they accused me of, cold, calculated, driven by pride?" Before she could answer, I ended the call. When I walked back inside the dining room, the air was heavier, thick, with everything unsaid. The plates were half touched now. My father looked up exhausted, as if the weight of years had settled into his shoulders. He spoke first. "Janet, sit down." I hesitated. For a moment, I almost said no. Then something in his voice, not command but invitation, made me move. I sat at the empty space where the 8th chair should have been. No one mentioned it. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "You're right about some things. We judged you too quickly. We thought you were choosing success over us, but we never asked why you worked so hard." "I worked hard because I was terrified of being nothing," I said quietly. "You always praised Emma for her charm, Marcus for his heart. You looked at me and saw control, responsibility, someone to manage things, not someone to be loved." Mom's tears spilled freely now. "We didn't mean to make you feel that way." "But you did," I said. Marcus looked down. "When I asked for money, I wasn't thinking about you. I was thinking about my pride. You offered to help, but I wanted the easy way out. I made that your fault." His confession stunned me. For the first time all evening, the room felt human again, fragile, bruised, but real. Emma reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Janet, you scare us sometimes. You do everything alone, like you don't need anyone. We thought pushing back would make you slow down. But we only pushed you away." I looked at her hand, the same hand that had texted me family only 24 hours ago, and something in my chest cracked open. Dad cleared his throat, his voice low. We thought you stopped caring about family, but maybe we stopped acting like one. No one spoke after that. The silence wasn't angry this time. It was raw, like a wound starting to breathe. I finally said, "You know, Mr. Chin told me something last night that revenge never fills you up. I thought he was wrong, but now—" I looked around the table. Now I think he was just older than me. Mom laughed through her tears. He's right. You can't eat bitterness and expect to feel full. I gave a small, sad smile. Maybe that's why none of us are eating. We sat there for a moment, all of us suspended in the strange quiet that comes after truth. Then I stood. Thank you for being honest tonight, I said softly. That's more than I expected. Dad frowned. Where are you going? I have another dinner to attend. Emma's brow furrowed. Another one? I nodded. At Northwestern Memorial. Every Thanksgiving I volunteer there. I serve meals to patients who can't go home. Marcus looked stunned. You still do that? Every year, I said, even when I wasn't invited anywhere else. They didn't answer. I reached for my coat. As I walked toward the kitchen, I stopped by Chef Antoine, who was finishing up dessert. Chef, I said softly, I need 7 full Thanksgiving dinners packed to go. Turkey stuffing, cranberry sauce, the works. He raised an eyebrow. 7. Yes. He smiled faintly. For the family. I shook my head. For people who'll appreciate it. He nodded once, understanding without judgment. 30 minutes. When I returned to the private room, they were still sitting there, weary, quiet, uncertain. I asked the kitchen to pack your meals to go, I said. Enjoy them at home. Or don't. It's up to you. Dad rose slowly. Janet, what happens now? I looked at him. Now you go home and think about whether you want to rebuild this family. Not because you feel guilty, but because you want to. If you do, you know where to find me. Emma wiped her face. And if we call, I smiled, the faintest trace of warmth returning. Then maybe next Thanksgiving you'll have a chair waiting for me again. I walked toward the door, pausing just once. Oh, Marcus, I said, glancing back. About your mortgage. You're not behind because of your job. You're behind because you and Sarah spend $4,000 a month on restaurants and shopping. I checked. His mouth dropped open. How did you— I'm good with numbers, I said simply. It's what I do. Then I left them there among the fading candlelight and the quiet hum of remorse. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes catching the glow of the streetlights. I pulled my coat tighter and whispered to myself, Happy Thanksgiving, Janet. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't revenge. It was release. By the time I reached Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the snow had thickened soft flakes, swirling beneath the amber glow of the streetlights. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like forgiveness. I carried 7 large takeout bags from Rosewood Bistro, the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon spilling into the cold night air. Inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly. The volunteer coordinator, Nora, looked up from the reception desk and smiled in surprise. Janet, you actually came. I thought your schedule. Not tonight, I said. I promised I'd be here. She noticed the bags in my hands. You brought food again. From Rosewood Bistro, I said, setting them down gently. The best meal they'll eat all year. Nora's eyes softened. You do this every Thanksgiving, but tonight you look different. I forced a faint smile. Maybe I am. Room 302. Mrs. Rodriguez lit up when I entered. The old woman had been in the ward for 3 months after hip surgery, her only family a son stationed overseas. When she saw the food, she gasped. Is that real turkey? It is, I said. Chef Antoine made it himself. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. From that fancy restaurant downtown. Oh, honey, I can't afford that. I smiled. Good thing you don't have to. Happy Thanksgiving, Mrs. Rodriguez. Her eyes glistened as I set her plate down. You're an angel. Just someone with good timing, I said softly. In room 315, Mr. Kim, an elderly man with thinning hair and an oxygen tube, stared in disbelief as I unveiled his meal. From Rosewood Bistro, he whispered, I used to take my wife there before she passed. I froze for a heartbeat. Then tonight she's eating with you again. He covered his mouth, tears spilling freely. You bought the restaurant. I blinked. How did you know? He smiled faintly. It's on the news. Someone said the owner sold it overnight to a young businesswoman named Dillard. I laughed softly. Guilty. He nodded, his eyes full of quiet pride. Then you did something right, Miss Dillard. Not everyone uses success to feed others. I didn't have words for that. I just placed a hand on his shoulder and said, Enjoy your meal, Mr. Kim. As I walked out, his voice followed me. You bought it for revenge and found something better. I stopped in the hallway, breath catching. How could a stranger see so clearly what I hadn't yet admitted to myself? By 10:00 p.m., all 7 meals had been delivered. The hallway smelled of sage and gratitude. I sat on a bench near the window, watching snowflakes gather on the glass. My phone buzzed. Dad, I hesitated before opening it. The dinner was beautiful. The conversation was hard. Can we try again? I stared at the screen, tears blurring the text. For the first time in years, his message didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like a beginning. I typed back, Sunday dinner, my place, I'll cook. A few seconds later, the reply came, we'll be there. I exhaled long, slow trembling, the kind of breath that empties everything out. For the first time that night, I let myself cry. 3 months later, Sunday dinners had become our tradition. Not every conversation was easy. We still argued, still stumbled, still carried the ghosts of that Thanksgiving night, but we were trying. Marcus had taken my budgeting advice and was slowly paying off his debts. Emma had joined Dillard Hospitality's marketing team, learning what my world actually looked like instead of judging it from a distance. Mom and Dad had even volunteered with me at the hospital on Christmas, helping serve meals to patients who couldn't go home. And Rosewood Bistro, it became the flagship of my company's fine dining division, earning more revenue than ever before without losing an ounce of its soul. The staff stayed. The regulars returned. The warmth came back. Above the kitchen door, I'd kept David Chin's original carving. Family is served here, but next to it, I added a new plaque, in gratitude dedicated to the ones who learned to come home. Sometimes when I walked through the dining room late at night after closing, I'd stop by table 12. 8 chairs now, always 8. Because forgiveness deserves a full table. I'd sit for a moment remembering that frozen afternoon when a cruel text message had shattered everything I thought I knew. The humiliation, the anger, the revenge, all of it had led me back here. I'd bought a restaurant to exclude my family. Instead, I'd built a place that brought us back together. And as the city lights flickered beyond the window, I finally understood success was never about power. It was about the courage to turn bitterness into grace.